Alright, another Truffle video. In this Truffle video, we're going to talk about testing. So now we've done, installation, we've done deployment, migration, and we've done more migration, advanced migration. Now we're going to look at Truffle testing and how we can make sure that our contracts function the way they should. And this is by building unit tests. And Truffle supports unit tests. You'd use and Truffle supports unit tests, and they use the Mocha framework and Chai, if you're familiar with JavaScript unit testing, to and they modify them a little bit to make it easier to test your contracts. But if you've done unit testing in JavaScript before, it's going to be very easy. And the way that we test smart contracts, if we go into our code, here we go, is that we create a new file in the test folder. Here we can create hello world test.js, so it's a JavaScript file, but you don't need to name it anything specific. First of all, just like in our migration files, and by the way, I've stepped back to the more simple migration file where we just deploy one of the contracts, the hello world contract. We need this top line for the test as well. This imports our contract so that we can use it in our test. And then the basic structure for a test in Truffle is that we write contract and then the name of the contract. So here we have hello world, and then we should have an anonymous function here, an arrow function, and you can send in some different arguments here. The normal one is that we send in account so that we can access the accounts array when we're testing, for example, ownership. And for each, you can have multiple ones of these statements. So for each of these statements, here is where we'll write the test in here. And you can have multiple of these contract statements full of tests for each file. And for each contract statement, it will redeploy your contract so that it is in a new clean state. If you require that, you can write another contract statement and you get a new clean deployed contract. Because in your test, you might screw up the state, you might change variables. So that is what this contract statement actually means. And then in here, we define the tests that we want to do. And we do that by writing it, autocomplete. There we go, it. And here we describe the test. So for example, you could write, and this it statement is sort of made so that you should write the test like, it should return hello world. But it's not always that that fits very well. So in this case, I'm going to describe the test like, let's see, let me look at the contract. What did we actually do? Set this, yeah, in the migration file, set it to hello world constructor. Okay, so let's just say constructor should set the message correctly. And the second argument here is also an anonymous function. So we'll write it like that. And in here, it's up to us to now create the test so that we test for this property. So what we want to do in here is to test, we want to check so that after we have deployed the contract, the message in the contract is actually hello world constructor. And we want to assert that that is the case. And if that for some reason fails, meaning the assertion fails, the message is something else, that means that something is wrong with our constructor because we specifically set it to hello world constructor. And that is how a unit test works. And in here we'll start, just like in our migration file, by getting the contract instance from hello world. So let hello world be equal to, no, instance be equal to hello world dot deployed. And we'll have to do a wait here. So this is what we did in the console previously. And then how do we get the message? If we want to test the message, let's get the message. So let's say let message be equal to await instance dot message. We could also say dot hello. It's the same thing in this case. And now let's make an assertion. So let's assert, and why is it auto inserting this? It's already included by default, so we don't have to import anything. Assert message should be equal to, here, what did we set the message to? Hello world constructor. It should be equal to that, otherwise something is seriously wrong. If we come into this test, we get the instance, we get the message, and then we assert, okay, the message should be equal to this, Otherwise, this test will throw an error because we asserted that this should be true. And actually what we should do is assert.equal here. Because we want to assert that these two are equal. And otherwise it will throw a test, it will throw an error. So let's run this, we'll run Truffle Test. As long as you run Truffle Test, it will test all of the files in your test folder. And it will run all of the tests. So let's run that and see what it says. It will compile our contracts and deploy them according to the migration files still. Let's see here. Await's only available. Oh, alright. So since we use await here instead of, .then, we have to put async up here for this function. Let's run it again. And I will see that this test passed. Constructor should set the message correctly. It has a checkbox and it says 1 passing. So this will summarize your entire testing suite. Now, let's say that we had an error in our contract. So let's modify the contract and say that we set the message instead of setting it to this, we just set it to custom message. So now we do have an error in our contract and you have to pretend that we don't know about it. And we just, okay, this is the migration file, we set it here. And now we were lucky to have our test because our test will catch this error that we just made. And now you will see assertion error. Expect the custom message to equal hello world constructor. And of course it will say here that, okay, this green one is what we expected. This red one is what it actually was. So this is why it's so good to have unit tests, because if you screw up in your contract in some way, maybe not this obvious, but there are other errors you can make in your Solidity code where it's good to have good coverage of tests, so that you test all of the different functionality. Another very important thing, if we make another test here below, is that owner should be accounts 0. It's a very important test that we set the owner correctly, because in our contract we might have functions that can only be executed by the owner, and to have the correct owner set, very, very important. So let's do the same thing here, and we'll get the instance same way as before, and then let owner be equal to await hello world.owner, and now we'll assert that owner should be equal to accounts 0. So remember we have this accounts array in Truffle. It comes in here. Truffle injects it into our test. And we can use it like this. An owner should equal the account 0. Because that's the default account that we deploy from. So let's try to run this. Truffle test. So now both tests should pass, because that's what we expect, right? We don't expect to have an error. Let's see here. World.owner is not a function. That's not what we were expecting. So now something looks to be wrong with our test, right? Because hello world.owner should be a function. But yeah, we need to have instance here instead of hello world like we had here. So we can't query this contract in and of itself. We have to get the deployed instance of the contract. Then we can query it like we did. So let's run this again. Test. Truffle test. You can of course fire up the Truffle console and run test there, and then you don't have to type Truffle test, but it's the same thing. So let's see here. Now we should expect it to pass. Instance owner is not a function. Oh yeah, we need to set this to public as well, so that we can query it like that. Try this one more time. Truffle test. There we go. This is what we expected, right? Both tests pass. Now we've checked basically two of the only things that we have in our contract. We could also check the set message function, but that could be a good assignment for you. So you could have a test that changes the message to something and then asserts so that the message is now the new value. What you have to keep in mind there is that you actually wait for the setting of the value to complete before you assert that it actually has changed. But that's a good assignment for you. So this is some basic testing, how we do it in Truffle, unit testing. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want, you can let me know down below. If you want more Truffle guides on testing, how we can do more advanced tests maybe, let me know down below and I can create those videos as well. Don't forget to check out the other Truffle videos on the channel. For example, how to deploy your Binance Smart Chain contracts to Binance Smart Chain from Truffle. How to deploy your contracts from Truffle to Binance Smart Chain. We have those videos. We have a lot of other videos, how to program Solidity. So check those out. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel. Check out moralis.io. And leave a comment down below with your thoughts. Thank you for watching.